from Relay FM. This is Upgrade, episode 502 for March 4th, 2024. Today's show is brought to you by Fitbod, ExpressVPN, and Squarespace. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm joined by Jason Snell. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Mike. We are marching 4th today, aren't
March the 4th be with you, Jason.
Mm-hmm. And also with 4.
With all 4. I have a Snell Talk question. Comes
Okay.
from John, and John wants
Great.
to know, Jason, did you ever attend the Apple Expos in Europe when they were a thing?
Going to be an easy answer. No.
Okay. What
We
were
did.
they?
We did. Apple did some events in Paris.
Yeah.
We did send. I think we sent Phil Michaels to one of those. We sent people to them occasionally, but basically they were like little European trade shows, but that Apple was the driver of, not IDG, and they did them for a few years, and then they stopped. But they made some minor announcements there. No, we didn't. I never went. I have never been to France. I have been through France on a train, but a couple of times. But I've never been to France. So I have no is my answer.
Probably the biggest thing announced there was macOS 10 public beta. Looking at the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
It's got iCloud and iSync in 2002. Big deal. Big deal. If you would like
Sure.
to send in a question for us to open a future episode of Upgrade, just like John did, go to upgradefeedback.com and send in a Snell Talk of your own. I have some follow-up for you, Jason.
Okay.
So we got a number of people write in with various pieces of follow-up about the sports betting lines and odds in the sports app. Ryan and Peter both wrote in to say that while they never place bets, they're interested in the odds as a tool to help predict an outcome of a game, which is good to know. Chris says if a person doesn't have a particular interest in either team, maybe they don't know much about them, but would want to know who the underdog is, which is also a good thing. And Logan wrote in with something I thought was quite funny, saying the data source for the Apple Sports app is too fast. I'm watching the Warriors game live on YouTube TV, and I can find out if a team scores before they even cross half court.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true. Streaming is often behind what you'd see on like more traditional TV, and I found actually that the local feeds are further behind for whatever reason. So yes, and Eddie Q is standing at courtside demanding immediacy, and then do they have to put in a delay for can you set your streaming delay so that you aren't spoiled by it? I mean, probably if you're watching the game, you shouldn't need to look down to see the score.
Or I feel
is
like maybe
probably
push
the answer.
notifications you wouldn't want. I don't know if the sports app does them, but you maybe wouldn't want that.
The TV app does though. So you might see like it's a close game and be like,
Is
I actually had that happen during the Super Bowl where it was very clear that the 49ers were going to give up that touchdown to lose the Super Bowl, and I got condolences from a friend before the final player was run.
What service did you watch the Super Bowl on?
On Fubo on my local TV channel,
Right.
CBS, which, like I said, the local streams are further behind.
Sucks. We were talking about how we don't like Apple News because of the news sources. Jeff wrote in with a top tip for anybody who wants to use Apple News to say if you go to Settings, News, and Restrict Stories in Today, you can see just stories from the sources that you choose to follow rather than the stuff that's recommended.
So I turned this feature on.
Very
And
good.
it makes Apple News really weird.
Okay.
And there are still a lot of things where you are seeing weird sources. But I will say, yeah, it does make it better if you basically say, look, just don't show me literally anything I haven't said as a source. That it makes it better. So I appreciate it. I still don't feel like Apple News' judgment about what I want to see, it matches at all what I want to see. So I think it's a product I would like to refrain from using, but I will say thank you to Jeff because it's a lot less terrible.
Yeah.
Source-wise. So, yeah, that's a good feature.
We were talking about the television app by Sandwich for Vision OS. The version 1.1 is out now, which has YouTube support. And they also put a couple more TVs in it. So I was just watching a 512 video on a Macintosh TV before we started recording today to get that full experience.
Nice.
So you can now watch YouTube in it, which is really good. That's a good addition to the app. Very
Great.
fun.
And the Mac TV.
Yeah, the Macintosh TV. It's in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on last week's episode, we were also talking about the idea of how a HomePod with a screen could work. And I was saying that maybe it would be cool if you could have some kind of eye tracking or hand tracking gestures to use the interface. Basically, as soon as we finished recording, I was on Threads and I saw a post from Swift Student Challenge developer Vedat of Vedat Apps. They posted a video of their submission of their app doing exactly this. So it's I think they're using it on a Mac. No, it's on an iPad. It's on an iPad of a Magic Keyboard. They're using hand tracking, which I think is part of the accessibility stuff, to highlight UI, and it kind of looks similar to tvOS. So I thought that was kind of funny. Like, the technology kind of exists. It maybe could work as a way to use a device like this. It would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I like good. Thank you to Vedant for sending that in. It's it's all things are possible.
Mm-hmm. All right, it's time for DMA Today. iOS 17.4 is due out today or this week, like next couple of days. So it'll be interesting to see how the DMA stuff advances over the coming days, if we're going to get any more about it, any more information. Setapp has announced that it plans to offer an alternative app marketplace in April. They have said that it will showcase a carefully selected assortment of apps, including fan favorites from the Setapp catalog. Developers are able to apply to be in their marketplace now. I'm intrigued how that's going to work.
The way that this is phrased is interesting because, as we've said, if you are a developer of an app and you want to be in an alternative marketplace, you have to opt into the new terms for Europe. So I was thinking about this. It can't be a one-to-one for Setapp apps in a Setapp marketplace, because some of the apps that are in Setapp are probably not going to want to be aren't going to want to opt into the new terms, right? So it's a selected assortment, including some from the Setapp catalog. Like, it'll be interesting to see how they position this whole thing, but that's going to be the challenge, right? Is that set up as a collection and as a product with a subscription, well, that's one thing. But like, as an alternative marketplace, the only apps in there will be apps that choose to be a part of the European alternate terms. And, we'll see how they feel about that.
And also for Setapp as well, like, maybe they're going to want the apps that they would be willing to pay the core technology fee for, right? Like, there is an element of any app that a company like this brings onto their marketplace, they kind of maybe want it to make sense for them. And, like, there's got to be some element there. But I'll be interested to see how it works. But we won't see it, but we'll see other people talk about it, I guess, because we won't be able to see them.
Yes, I look forward to hearing from Europeans about how this goes.
Yep. Today, the European Commission has issued a €1.9 billion fine to Apple for, quote, abusive App Store rules for music streaming providers. There are two...
Today!
Indeed.
This is not the DMA, but it is today, so
it's
it
very
counts
today. And I mean,
part of the DMA
I feel
today.
like it fits in here, right? Like, it's adjacent to the DMA. So it's European legislation.
Very, very close.
Corner.
Very nearby.
So there's two press releases I'm going to put in the show notes. One is from the European Commission, one is from Apple. I think I saw the Apple one first. I don't know who published first, but obviously Apple knew this was coming today. I think we spoke about this last week or the week before, that there was a fine coming, but it was much less expected than 1.9 billion. So the European Commission post says things like, the Commission found that Apple applied restrictions on app developers, preventing them from informing iOS users about alternative and cheaper music subscription services available outside of the app, quote, anti-steering provisions. This is illegal under EU antitrust rules. And Apple's conduct, which lasted for almost 10 years, may have led many iOS users to pay significantly higher prices for music streaming subscriptions because of the high commission fee imposed by Apple on developers and passed on to consumers in the form of higher subscription prices for the same service on the Apple App Store. I will just say, I will commend the European Commission for making a very readable press release. Like, when I opened it up, I was like, this is going to be full of legal stuff, but I actually found it to be very readable and clear, which I appreciated.
Sure.
Apple published a post of their own saying things like, quote, "The decision was reached despite the Commission's failure to uncover any credible evidence of consumer harm and ignores the realities of a market that is thriving, competitive, and growing fast. Today, Spotify has a 56% share of Europe's music streaming market, more than double their closest competitors, and pays Apple nothing for the services that have helped make them one of the most recognizable. Spotify wants to bend the rules in their favor by embedding subscription prices in their app without using the App Store's in-app purchase system. They want to use Apple's tools and technologies, distribute on the App Store, and benefit from the trust we've built with users, and to pay Apple nothing for it." Apple's post is very big, long, and dripping with feelings.
Scorn.
Apple will appeal
Yes.
this decision, as you would assume. Do I need to restate how I feel about this? I think it's honestly wild to me that like Apple tries to pretend that the steering stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I find that so strange. We
could see it, we were looking right at it.
Yeah, like I pay more money for my YouTube subscription because I choose to do it in the App Store. Now, how is that like me as a consumer, my experience, I'm paying more money because of it. So what then? Like this is exactly
Right.
what Europe's saying, that people are paying more money for their subscriptions because companies increase the prices, so they're not taking a 30% cut because Apple wants a 30% cut on. In some instances, I think arguably for not a lot of reason, I think Spotify is one of these. Like Apple would like you to believe that Spotify is successful because of them. I don't believe that's the case at all.
Yeah.
But that's what Apple is trying to say.
Yeah. No, the nice thing about that Apple Newsroom press release is it lays out Apple's argument very clearly, which is successful apps that are on the iPhone are successful in part because of all of Apple's good works, and that Apple is a partner to you. And quite frankly, Apple's not thrilled that they let you do that without giving them any money.
Yeah.
But they're willing to accept that as long as you accept all their rules. Like you can see the attitude. It's very clear. This is the attitude that has driven Apple. So they're doing us a favor by making it very clear about their approach here. Now, I do think they score some points. I think Spotify not wanting to be part of the Reader app thing apparently is interesting, right? Because that was Apple's like, well, we'll let you put a link in. It was a very dumb thing, right? It was the smallest of concessions possible. Spotify could have taken them up on it, and that would have lessened the blow, and I think that's why they didn't. So Apple calling them out, I kind of get that.
I think it would have completely undermined their case, which I think is fair to make. Right. Like if they would have taken that, then they have no case anymore.
But it allows Apple to score a point in reverse, saying we gave them the ability to do the thing that they're complaining about, and they refused. But again, yes, I can see both sides, but I think it allows Apple to make that point. I think that Apple's it's interesting. Like Apple's point is, but Spotify's successful anyway. And it's like, well, yeah, but like they're successful even though you have in-app purchase with no commission to any middleman, and they don't, and they're still successful. That doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't be more successful still if you were not doing these rules. And these are the worst rules, right? These anti-steering rules where it's like, but don't admit that you have a service outside the App Store. Don't admit that there's a place you can go to pay for things. Just put up a screen that says log in with that account you made somewhere else. We don't even know where, right? Like
they are the most flimsy because it's like, physical purchases. No, they're okay. It's like, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Like, why does Amazon not have to use in-app purchase to buy things from Amazon? But because music is digital, for some reason, like it doesn't. The steering stuff is the worst of the worst.
And I would say this is the worst when Apple has a direct competitor, right? Like that's the biggest problem is, and the Apple Music is pre-installed on every iPhone, right? Like Apple has so many advantages here. And the fact, and this is the same with like something like books versus Kindle, it's the same thing, which is Apple has this home field advantage, and they've built a product to take advantage of the fact that they're the platform owner. That's the stuff that really irks me. So I appreciate Apple's post because it really gets to the heart of sort of what Apple's philosophy is about all of this, which comes back to, I think, a core part of Apple's corporate personality, which is that anything that succeeds that involves the iPhone, Apple is one of the reasons it succeeded. And on one level, that's true, but what I very rarely see is the reciprocal from Apple, which is the iPhone has also succeeded because of the apps that are on it. Apple really, their attitude is that they created a beautiful marketplace, and everybody came to the marketplace, and Apple is the landlord, and Apple wants its rent, and that's just the way that Apple views it. And it's been clear all along, but this newsroom post kind of clarifies that further. I mean, there are, like, look, I think that I have questions about some of the EU rulings because to the point of bashing a market leader's competitor for not letting the market leader have even more advantage. It's like there's the practical and then there's the real, right? There's like detail of like, well, Apple's a platform owner and they're using their platform powers. It's true. Also, we're protecting the dominant player from one of its competitors. And it's worse because it's the dominant Europe-based competitor over the American company that's not in first place. Like, there are ways to read this that are very protectionist and also silly in the same way that the book's ruling against Apple was silly, in that what it was doing was protecting the dominant force over competition. But that all said, like, I think in the end, we've been talking about this a lot. This is about Apple. This is some of the worst of Apple's policies, right? Because this is literally pretend, no web links. Like, you can't go out to a web browser. You can't tell people that you have things. That's just some of the worst of what they do.
Yeah, the protectionist argument I don't really like. Like, I know that people make it, but it's just like, this is Spotify going to their government. Like, would it really... Like, something like this will, if it hasn't already started happening in America, it doesn't actually make a difference. Like, the fact that they're in Europe, they're just going to the government is going to help them out the most. There was one other thing that I really liked. I can't find the quote now, just in skimming through it, but Apple references in one point about at one point they sent some of their developers to Spotify to help them with some stuff. We've flown our engineers to Stockholm to help Spotify's teams in person. And they talk about again, Spotify pays Apple nothing. And that, to me, is like kind of proving the point of how Apple values Spotify being on their platform because they know it's important for the selling of their iPhones. Like, I feel like this is that in trying to make their point about how helpful Apple is, I think it kind of, the mask slips a little bit about the other point, which is Apple also needs Spotify to be on their phones, because if it wasn't, there would be an amount of people who would be less satisfied with their iPhone.
See, I think this section also I think it's actually dumb. I think this is a case where Apple is way over its skis now.
Yeah.
Because what it's describing here is, wow, Apple's really running a terrible business, right? Because if Spotify is truly doing all of this and Apple gives them nothing, like, is that out of largesse? Like, what it says to me is maybe you should have chosen a different set of rules where a company like Spotify building a huge business on your platform, maybe you and Spotify should have worked out some sort of agreement about it. But instead, what they're left with is, well, we kind of gave the rules for free and they took advantage. So now we're putting the screws to them because it's the only, these are the rules that let us put the screws to them. And there's no alternative, right? There's no alternative involving competition. Their only alternative is to give Apple 30%. Those are their choices here. So I look at this and it actually makes me chuckle, because it's like, oh, we did all this stuff for free. We give and give and give, and they still want more. And I look at it and go, well, maybe that's dumb. Like, maybe you should have had a different model, but this is the model you chose, and patching it with very weird. It doesn't justify the 30% cut, right? It doesn't. It's unconnected from them. Spotify plays Apple nothing. It sure is hard to beat free, they say. Okay.
And also, like, this idea that they say all the time, like, we treat all developers equally. I mean, clearly not, right?
No.
Because you sent developers to Sweden to help them.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
same, like, we frequently expedite reviews at Spotify's requests. Frequently? I don't think most developers get frequent expedited reviews. They get, I think there's a limit to it, right? That you can actually ask for a year for most apps. So there you go.
Yeah, it is it's funny because the DMA is coming, and this is like the fine for everything in front of the DMA, essentially. But like if you want a clear distillation of how Apple views it, I think that the Newsroom post is very, very well written and makes Apple's case very clear. But I think that, like I said, I think they score some points in there. But I think in general, it is trying to make the best of a situation that, it built these rules and then felt it was being exploited. So it built more rules inside of it, and then it built more rules inside of that. And those rules turned out to be not, be anti-competitive and rent-seeking and all those things. And like, this is why on one level, I kind of feel like what Apple, like Apple's decision to have new business terms in the EU, on one level, that really does make sense, because it is Apple saying, all right, let's change the rules. But it only changes the rules in the one place, and you have to opt in. It's like, okay, all right, it is what it is. It's Apple will appeal the decision, so oh boy, we'll probably talk about it more in the future. Plus, we're entering the DMA era, so we'll see how that changes things.
I'm in my DMA era. It's everyone's favorite. This episode is brought to you by Fitbod. When you want to change your fitness level, it can be hard to know how to get started. That's why I'm pleased to let you know that Fitbod is an easy and an affordable way to build a fitness plan and path that is just for you, because everybody has their own path for fitness, which is why Fitbod uses data to make sure they customize things to suit you exactly, adapting as you improve, making sure every workout is challenging, pushing you to make the progress in the way that you want, and keeping things interesting. But while you're learning these new exercises, it's made super easy. Fitbod has over 1,000 demonstration videos built right in within the app. So you see a new exercise, you can read how to do it and see a video too. So you're going to be making sure you're learning every movement the right way. Superior results are achieved when a workout program is tailored to your unique body, experience, environment, and goals. This is all stored in your Fitbod gym profile. This keeps track of your muscle recovery so you can avoid burnout and keep up your momentum, and it also builds your best possible workout by combining the power of AI with exercise science and certified personal trainers. They analyze billions of data points, and they're all fine-tuned by these trainers to make sure it's just right. Muscles improve when they work in concert with your body, so overworking some muscles while underworking others can impact results negatively. This is why Fitbod tracks your muscle fatigue and recovery and designs a well-balanced workout routine, so they're going to be mixing up your workouts and your sets and all that kind of stuff. The Fitbod app is also really easy to use. You can stay informed with their progress tracking charts, reports, and there's also sharing cards, so you can share your achievements and your personal best with your friends and family. I really love the way that Fitbod works with my Apple Watch. So when I'm using it, if it's an exercise that I know before, I can just, I can tap through, I can do it, I can adjust anything I want to, and I can say I've completed it. But if I see the name of an exercise I'm not familiar with, then I can go to my phone and I can watch the videos and continue. Personalized training of this quality can be expensive. Fitbod is just $12.99 a month or $79.99 a year. But you can get 25% off your membership by signing up today at fitbod.me/upgrade. So go now and get your customized fitness plan at fitbod.me/upgrade for 25% off your membership at fitbod.me/upgrade. Our thanks to Fitbod for the support of this show and Relay FM. So this morning, there was another press release. It followed the Spotify press release, introducing the world to the M3 MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Above 13 and 15 inches.
I'd like to thank Apple for finally lining its product announcements with Upgrade. We appreciate it.
Yes. Well, at least this one. We don't know. I feel like maybe there's some other stuff coming. You don't think
Finally.
so? Well, this
Finally.
is it? The only one?
Mike, just declare victory. Clearly, this is what it's going to be like from now on forever, okay?
A mission accomplished banner just fell behind me.
Great.
We did it. So there's a few things about this one. I'm going to read a couple of little quotes. So we've got the Midnight colorway now features the breakthrough anodization seal to reduce fingerprints. That was in the Space Black MacBook Pro, is that right?
That's right.
So Midnight, which has become a little bit of a joke, I think, in some circles as being the fingerprinty version. They've now added that, which I think just makes that color even better.
Okay.
It's not that bad.
By the way, to be clear, jargon alert, you're the one who said colorway. The word colorway has not yet appeared in an Apple press release. So.
I mean, at this point, though, come on. You don't like it?
No, I think
colorway like just color?
A stupid word. Color.
Just
There's
color?
a word for it. It's color.
I like color.
What way is that color?
It's the way towards color, you know? That's what it means.
No.
It's this way towards color. I have no problem with colorway, although I am a person who doesn't like jargon, so maybe I should get rid of that one because I've got to kind of live to my own ideals in this world. The M3 MacBook Air features Wi-Fi 6E, which is apparently 2 times faster, which is nice. But here's the big thing. Here's the thing. We've burned a lot of minutes talking about this exact idea.
Oh, man.
MacBook Air with M3 now supports up to 2 external displays when the laptop lid is closed.
Yep.
So it can support one display of up to 6K and then a second up to 5K in resolution.
That's right.
Now, this is really interesting because this is the thing we were talking about a lot, that the M3 MacBook Pro didn't do this, right? Like it was... You could just have your display open and plug in one display. If you tried to hook up a second display, it wouldn't work. But also, you can't just close it and see 2 displays. It was your internal display and one external display, or bust, whether you're using the internal display or not. What do you think's going on here? What do you think they've done?
I don't know. I'm real interested in finding out. Because... This is not a feature in the M1 MacBook Pro or M3 MacBook Pro low-end model. So what happened? I don't know. Like, is it something integral in the hardware where the way they've integrated this display allows it to do that, or is it? I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things where I look forward to talking to Apple and asking them why this is like this now. It's great. The people who complained about this feature will just shift to complaining about how it doesn't do it lid open. But like for me, this is the one of the major drawbacks of the MacBook Air in Apple Silicon that has been rectified. If you need to run 3 monitors simultaneously, the 2 externals and the internal monitor, buy a MacBook Pro.
There's always one more monitor.
I feel okay
right?
about that.
Like,
there
can always be one more.
There will always be one more monitor.
But this does make, and I remember we were talking about this at the time, where we were like, why not? There are 2 displays. Why not always run 2 displays, whether it's open or closed, right? So if you've closed it, then run 2 displays. And so it seems like they found a way to do it. I wonder if this is going to, like, this... Would you assume this has to be a hardware change? I mean, I know we can maybe try and find this information out, but would you expect that this is a actual change to the M3 chip?
No. I think
so?
the chip is not changed at all. I don't think. No, I think an M3 is an M3 is an M3. I think it has to do with the particular. It's either a firmware thing or it is a particular way that the MacBook Air has been built to allow it to turn off. Because remember, the Mac Mini supports 2 external displays with M1 and M2 because it doesn't have a third display wired. So it may just be the way that the display on the MacBook Air is connected is different than the way it was the display was connected on the M2. And it allows the system to shut down that display and use that resource somewhere else. But I don't know, right? Like, I don't know enough about what all the moving parts are. I don't expect that the chip is any different. I don't think that's it. I think it's how the computer was built, or it's a firmware kind of thing that they've updated the firmware to more, to shut down that internal display and drive it to external displays. And if it's firmware, I mean, maybe they could do an update that would enable that on the MacBook Pro. That's what I have to ask. But gut feeling is that they built it into the MacBook Air, and that's why the MacBook Air can do this.
Because it would be a shame, I think, if there wasn't a way to bring this capability to the MacBook Pro. Like, because I've got to wonder if they worked on this capability because of people talking about it on the MacBook Pro. And then if that's the case, like, it's a really strange thing to be like, yeah, but the MacBook Air does it. Don't worry about the MacBook Pro. The MacBook Air does it. Because, like, we talk about this and lots of people talk about this. Like, Apple's product lineups are strange to work out sometimes. Mm-hmm. And this would definitely make it more complicated, right? Because this is a more powerful feature, right, that the MacBook Air would have over the MacBook Pro.
Right.
For like getting work done.
For the base model.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the MacBook Pro is supposed to be the thing that is the more powerful to let you get the best work done, right? Like,
right, but in the base model you would pay more, you would get that display, but you wouldn't get the two. Well, I mean, it's not that complicated. If you want to use two external displays, don't get that one, get this one.
Yes.
And because the chip is the same, so it's really just that. But what you will lose is that beautiful internal display that's on the
Which
MacBook
is really
Pro.
Amazing. And this also does make me think that, like, one of the things that we were talking about at the time is, like, we had expected that the MacBook Air had kind of become the default machine that people get in a lot of workplaces, or should be, and I feel like this just underscores that. Like, the MacBook Air 100% should be the computer that your employer buys you, unless you have a very specific need, right?
Right, and we've heard those stories before, and those will only continue now, where somebody ends up with a substandard, like just an M3 base MacBook Pro instead of a MacBook Air, and they want to use two external displays and they can't, right? Like that'll happen. And they'll be very frustrated that there was another option out there that would have done it and probably given them better specs, right? Because they would have been able to price it up a little bit to get it to the MacBook Pro base model price, and it would have had more stuff in it, and then it will just not. Their company will be like, well, no, that's a consumer laptop. We need a Pro laptop. Yeah, it's weird.
And how about this paragraph for foreshadowing? With the transition to Apple Silicon, every Mac is a great platform for AI. M3 includes a faster and more efficient neural engine, along with accelerators in the CPU and GPU to boost on-device machine learning, making MacBook Air the world's best consumer laptop for AI.
Right, which just means that it's Apple's consumer laptop, and it's got the new neural engine with more cores in the M3.
That's they're talking about AI.
It's meaningless. It is. AI has become a checkbox.
Yeah.
A bullet point. You've got to mention. Everybody was like, well, what about AI? I hear AI is big. Can this computer do it? The AI? And Apple's like, yep, great. We got some stuff.
Does it. It does AI like you wouldn't believe. But like, and
they've got some examples of.
They've stayed away
very
from using this term. I feel like, by and large, and it feels
I guess
now they're just embracing it as they should.
They're just embracing it. Yeah. So because they lean on machine learning a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny. It's always funny to see what they use as their examples. So for AI, it's like GoodNotes 6 with AI math assistants, Pixelmator Pro photo enhancement, background noise removal in CapCut. Like, it's very specific. Like, we've got some ML enhanced things in software, and it can run LLMs and diffusion models for image generation locally, which I guess is basically like those apps that you download the open source model and run it. So, I mean, it's not untrue. It's just something that, just like how they always mention recyclability, like these Macs have, they say first Apple product to be made with 50% recycled content, 100% of the aluminum, but also 100% of the rare earth elements and magnets, 100% recycled copper in the main logic board, which is a first for them. So, and 99% fiber-based packaging, right? Like they always say that. Well, it's a checkbox. The environmental thing, Apple got criticized like 20 years ago by Greenpeace, and since then it has been calling out its environmental commitments in their PR, and that's just part of what they do. Well, the AI drumbeat has gotten so loud that they're like, all right, we'll list our AI We'll disclose our AI hardware that we've built, that we've improved, and here it is, just because somebody's going to ask. And like, does it address some of the questions about Apple's software and AI? No, it does not. But it does. They're pointing at the hardware, and they're pointing at the neural engine. They're pointing at the stuff that they can point at and say, yeah, sure, we have an AI story too, and it's the neural engine.
The lowest configs start with 8 gigabytes of RAM. I'm mentioning that because there's always a thing, right?
It's good to make people mad.
Yep.
Give the fingerprints. We took the fingerprints away from you. We took the 2 external displays away from you. Where can people be mad?
There's always got to be something.
Base RAM.
We got to find it.
Base RAM.
That's where it is.
Is great. 8 gigs of RAM. 256 gig SSD for $10.99. I'll just point out that's an M3 at $10.99. Remember that the M2 MacBook Air started at what, $12.99? So like they have managed to get the price down on these things. And one of the ways they do it is those are configurations you're probably going to want to upgrade. So for $12.99, you can get the 10-core GPU with 512 SSD. And for $14.99, you can get that product that sad person whose company bought them an M3 MacBook Pro instead of the M3 MacBook Air. This is the one that they want, right? Because it's 10-core GPU, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 SSD for $14.99, which is a pretty good value. But they got the base models down, and then they pushed the M2 version is still available at $9.99. So that product has come way down from when it was introduced a couple years ago, all the way to a base model at $9.99. And I guess that means
goodbye to the old MacBook Air design. It's gone now.
We farewell. That is it is the classic MacBook Air design. Yep. The M1 MacBook Air was sort of the last computer to have the classic MacBook Air design, and all of our talk about maybe they'll just keep it around and keep getting it. And nope, it's gone. Just gone. And instead, there's a $9.99 M2 Air, $8.99 in education, right? So like they're basically saying that's it, right? Like that's as low as they need to go. They don't need to go with their laptop, at least right now, any lower than that.
It was funny. I was talking to my wife about this today. Adina uses an M1 MacBook Air. And I was just saying, oh, they did this. And she's like, saying, oh, they got rid of the one that you have. And she's like, oh, no. I'm like, what? She's like, I love the way that mine looks. That's the one that I want. Like, I want to hang on to it for as long as possible. I'm like, great, you can. Like, the M1 MacBook Air is great. You'll have it for a long time. And I'm like, what do you like about it? And she's like, I like how sleek it is. And I'm like, mine's thinner, right? She's like, yeah, but I like the curvy look of it. Like, it is a design style that some people prefer, and she does. Like, she doesn't like mine. She's like, it's too square, it's too boxy. And she's like, I like how light mine is. I'm like, mine's lighter. She's like, no, but mine feels lighter. I'm like, what are you talking about? But, different
time moves on.
Yep, it sure does.
Yeah.
There were rumors about this coming, that there were going to be products released this week. And I've got a report from Mac Rumors where they had a source about some stuff, and they got it right that there would be MacBook Airs, and there are also new iPhone cases and watch bands and stuff like that. But the other big rumor out there is iPads. So I wonder if we're going to see them hopefully next Monday, so we can keep the upgrade train going here.
Keep it running.
Yeah,
I think maybe so.
We'll keep.
That's
nice. What we'll assume next Monday. But that's still on the horizon. Do you have anything more to say on these MacBook Airs?
No, I mean, can't wait to get my hands on them.
Yep.
Interested to see. Oh, yes, I have one other note, which is in the pantheon of short-lived Apple products, we must now induct the M2 15-inch MacBook Air.
Oh, yeah.
Which is gone.
Oh, they don't do a quote-unquote like cheaper model of the 15. It's just the 13?
No, just the 13. So the 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, which arrived last summer, is now dead.
Wow,
but that's okay.
That did not last a very long time. That computer did.
Because the M3 models are exactly the same. I mean, all my read on that, and this is the thing, is like this is an internals update. It's really an M3 update. Everything else about these things, other than the anodization seal, and the way and how they look are the same. So they don't want to do a discounted 15. They just want the current 15. So that they do that with some stuff, right? Where it's like, well, no, but this is there's only going to be one of these. We're not gonna we hit our that old M2 is down there in the price list for price reasons, and the old 15-inch would not be down there, right? It would be competing at a higher price, and they don't want that. So the RIP M2 15-inch.
Stuff like this, like that specific thing, it's like, I would love to know how Apple's inventory management works. How could they have predicted the amount that they would need for this period for a product that hadn't existed before?
It's a good question. I'm sure they watched the sales and stopped making them when they felt they had enough, right? And then they have outlets. They'll have any leftovers end up getting they're put on Amazon, or they're sold to partners, or like they can do it with the remnants of it. But I think what they starting last summer, they're able to monitor 15-inch sales, and they don't remember Apple doesn't like having a lot of inventory on hand.
Sure.
So they want to make as many as they can sell. So even if they made a bunch up, the only time that Apple gets burned by that is if they make a bunch of something up front and then the sales aren't anything close, because they have to fill the channel, and then they're like, oh no, we made so many, we don't know if we'll ever empty the channel. Like the HomePod was like that, right? Original HomePod, they made a lot of them, and then they realized that they were going to struggle to sell all of them. But with a 15-inch Air, my guess is that that's not the case, and that they knew very quickly how many they would need to make to get to this point. And again, probably the M3 models are a minor change in terms of manufacturing, because they look, for all intents and purposes, identical to the ones that came before. So it's probably not a huge change. But yeah, that 15-inch model, gone.
I was well into my 20s before I realized that phrase was not intensive purposes or intensive purposes.
No, it's not. It's intense and purposes.
Purposes.
It's one of those English phrases where you say you are repetitive in order to make a point. It's our language is very special.
Very special. But whatever you do, don't say colorway.
Colorway is bad. It's just dumb. It's just dumb jargon. Like, how do we dress up a word? Well, let's just add a little. It's like saying incentivize. It's like, or you could just say it gives an incentive. Well, no. It incentivizes the upsell of the, sorry, Merlin's got a list of all those
it's like
phrases. Monetize
I like
and incentivize.
when people say copious. I feel like it's copious is like a word that people use so they sound smart.
So lots.
Just say lots. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, there are fun words out there that have fun meanings, but yeah, that's colorway. I twigged to colorway at some point because I thought, somebody just came up with a stylish sounding word for it is a color.
Yeah.
We offer this in. I mean, the other thing is colorway can mean like a collection of colors. I think in that way it actually works for me. Where I was like, well, and you can see in our sandstone colorway, we offer these various sort of like earth tones or whatever. But when it's like it comes in blue and brown, those are our colorways. It's like, no, those are just your colors, dude. They're just colors.
The Oxford Dictionary defines colorway as any of a range of combinations of colors in which a style or design is available.
Combination of colors.
And the word started being used in like the 1920s.
Yeah, it's gross. Make it die.
This episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. There are tons of VPN providers out there, but there's a reason that I use ExpressVPN and why we have them as a sponsor is because they're good. ExpressVPN doesn't log your activity online. You can get lots of cheap or free VPNs out there, but they're going to make money by selling your data to advertisers. ExpressVPN doesn't do this. They even developed a technology called Trusted Server that makes their VPN servers incapable of storing data because it stores it in RAM, so it just gets erased. I like that. ExpressVPN is super fast. They use another technology they made called Lightway, which is a new VPN protocol that they engineered to make user speeds faster than ever. If you've tried other VPNs, you'll know that they can sometimes slow your connection. But ExpressVPN is always blazing fast and lets you stream videos in HD quality with zero buffering. This is my favorite thing about ExpressVPN. The biggest use that I get out of it ExpressVPN in general is when I'm traveling, because if I don't know a Wi-Fi network, I want to feel secure on it, so I'll connect to ExpressVPN. But then I can also change my location to be back to home, so I can continue watching that show I'm watching on Netflix or whatever that might not be available when I'm traveling. But if I'm going to do that, I don't want to have to sit through buffering. Like hotel Wi-Fi is bad enough. You don't want a VPN to make it worse. With ExpressVPN, I never have this problem. It's super easy to use as well. You don't need any technical skills. You just fire up the app, tap one button, and you're connected. Your kids, your grandparents, tech-savvy people or not, anyone can use it. This is why Mashable, The Verge, and many other tech websites have rated ExpressVPN the #1 VPN in the world. So protect yourself online with the VPN that I use and I trust. Go to expressvpn.com/upgrade today and get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/upgrade. One last time, expressvpn.com/upgrade to learn more. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for the support of this show and Relay FM. We now get to do something that we have very seldom done in the history of this show. I'm not sure if we've ever done it. We get to raise like a banner into the arena of Upgrade the Upshift podcast artwork, which was created a couple of years ago for whenever we would talk about Apple's car efforts. We get to raise it up into the sky for everybody to look up at because the Apple car
This is a weird metaphor.
is no more. What? Isn't that what you do in sports? You raise the jerseys.
When you retire. Well, you raise a banner if you win a championship. You raise the jersey. You're retiring a number. I think the way I would put this is we are doing a very special thing today, which is we are retiring Upshift as a topic on Upgrade. It's more than just the art; it's the topic, right? It's beautiful art, but what we're really doing is we are saying goodbye to a beloved ? Topic on our podcast because as goes the Apple Car project, so goes the Upshift segment.
Yep. Mark Gurman at Bloomberg first reported on Tuesday that Apple has decided to cancel its plans to build a car, also known as Project Titan. This project shifted a lot throughout the 10 years that it was in development, from full self-driving to partial self-driving and everything in between. Mark Gurman says that almost 2,000 people were working on the project up until recently. It had been headed most recently by Kevin Lynch, who along with COO Jeff Williams made the call to stop their efforts. Many of the employees that are in this team, which is known as the Special Projects Group, will now have their efforts turned towards AI work and will join John Giannandrea's team. What do you think about this?
Whew. Well, so I wrote a lot of words about this on Friday. I am not one of those people who's like, I'm glad that they killed this project because I never thought it was a good idea, right? Breaking news, your opinions were validated a decade later. I feel pretty strongly like there was a moment 10 years ago when this apparently all started, when, if you think back to that, who was even making electric cars then? It was Tesla, and they really only had the one model that they were shipping to consumers, which was the Model S, very expensive one. But then they were talking about self-driving and all that. There was a moment, I think, where Apple could have said, we see how the computer technology is going to eat the car industry. And we know computer technology, and we're not worried about the details of a drivetrain or whatever. We'll buy our license or whatever. It's not that big a deal. But what's more likely, that the car industry is going to understand hardware and software for computers and sensors and batteries and all those things, or that we who understand all those things can come into the car market? The idea that cars and computers were converging in the late 2020s, let's say, and that Apple had just as much of a chance to get there as GM did, if not more, right? I think that was the argument. As far as I kind of considered it, there's a place here where the car makers are asleep, and Tesla is the only one playing this game, and we could play this game, and we have more resources than Tesla, and we could, eat the lunch of the auto industry and even maybe get to the point where we have technology that's so advanced that they're going to either come to us begging or they're going to, or we're going to be able to leverage their expertise in the car part of it, but at our terms. Like, I think that there is a really strong case to be made at the beginning that computer cars essentially are going to be a thing, and why not Apple? And if you're a company that has all the money and is worried about where your future revenue growth is going to come from, that is worth placing a bet. Now, keep in mind, I also want to say, because by all accounts, this is like a 10-year-old project. That's an era. They hadn't even 10 years ago. They hadn't even done a bigger iPhone yet, right? They hadn't even done the iPhone 6 Plus yet. So they weren't really talking up their services business yet. The Apple Watch hadn't come out yet. It came out like 10 years ago or 9 years ago. It was announced a little less than 10 years ago. So it was a long time ago. But like, if you're looking at the future and your growth as a company and knowing that Wall Street will demand infinite growth, right? Placing a bet with all of your cash that you have on hand, and they had a lot back then, it's not a bad idea. So I think that there was something there at that time for a product. But it feels to me like what happened is at some point, and maybe it was there at the inception, or maybe it was shortly thereafter, there ended up being a group of people inside Apple who really believed that the only way that an Apple car made sense was that if it was fully autonomous, that they were on the edge perhaps of a breakthrough. Somebody in the industry, like Elon Musk, always talked about that it was right around the corner. That has proven to not be true at all, and that it's still around the corner for him, and it may always be around the corner. But we did an episode called, what is it? Hey Car, Stop.
Yeah, something like that.
Which I looked at and made me laugh. That was a funny, like using Siri to tell your car to stop. About the moment when Mark Gurman came out, much later, he came out with a report that they were still hanging on to this idea, which was they designed a car that wasn't like a car. It was like a little mobile salon that you sat in, and it didn't have a steering wheel. And they wanted it, and this was apparently Johnny Ive's vision, was they let's just make a car that has no steering wheel. It's super minimal, sounds like Johnny Ive. And to me, this is the moment where it got off track, because I admire the ambition, but I would also say the arrogance of thinking we're going to be able to make a car that never needs to be driven. Like we're going to solve it so completely that we can throw out the idea of a car. And that probably if Apple's going to make a car, it must be the perfect magical car that drives itself everywhere. And I don't know. I mean, you gotta really believe in that, because for me, it felt obvious that you always are going to need to be able to drive your car, right? Not all scenarios are going to be handled by the magic computer. I think the moment that the group of people who decided, no, the Apple car project is this aspirational project about something that will absolutely be self-driving all the time, and we're gonna just bet on that. And in their diagram, there's just a big cloud with a question mark there, because nobody had done it or has done it. And worth a try, right? Could be revolutionary, but the way that Tesla always approached it was, we're going to make a car. And yeah, we're confident that it'll be self-driving next year, and they keep saying that. But like in the meantime, we made a car that's like a computer car, and it's got driver assist features, and it's got all these nice things about it, and it's electric. And the other guys are still like a decade behind. So they could have done that. And this is the thing, like the Vision Pro, it feels very much like there's a contingent inside Apple that is like, don't ship it until it's perfect. And so for the Vision Pro, it was like there was that story about how there's a contingent inside of Apple, of designers especially, that were like, no, if you can't make AR glasses, just don't ship it. And Apple's like, Apple executives were like, no, we're going to ship Vision Pro. And then iterate. You ship it, and then you iterate. It seems like with a car, at some point, the argument to not ship something that is not the magical perfect future was won. And so they changed into this entire project contingent on full self-driving all the time, no steering wheel, which, I mean, I just took one look at that report and was like, well, that's literally never going to happen. That was the moment where I went from, I'm open-minded about this, there's an interesting potential here, to what are they doing? And many years had passed since then. And so when they finally, a couple years ago, apparently refactored this whole thing and said, no, why don't we try to ship something that's like a Tesla? Like, the moment had passed. Like, there was a moment, like 2014, you could have made something by 2019, 2020 that would have been in the market and would have sort of like defined what a modern computery car was, and maybe had some whizzy Apple features that people would have been like, oh, Apple really got this. Watch out Tesla, watch out other new people. Apple really figured it out. But instead, they put their money on a breakthrough that never came. And by the time that they decided to refactor back to the other thing, it was too late. And I think that fundamentally, that is not how you should design a product. You should design a product based on practicality and then work toward your breakthrough. And that's not what they did. And so, I think there was a root of a good idea 10 years ago. And by the time that they got to the realization they weren't going to ship their unrealistic idea, it was too late. Because like today, I don't feel like if Apple shipped a Tesla-like car, and I think this is the decision they made, that it would make a difference. Like, it's too late. The car makers have all gotten into the computer car thing now. Computer cars, even non-electric cars are computer cars now, and then there are more electric cars too. So, like, the moment has passed. So, that's my thought about it. Is I do not agree that Apple should never have investigated this. I also don't believe when people are like, oh, think of the kinds of products Apple makes. This is so different. I've seen enough of Apple shifting gears. Like, Apple can do what they want. Apple retail was something everybody said couldn't happen, because can you imagine Apple having like a retail store with employees all over the world and a bunch of different, and they're like hundreds of stores? And like, well, it was important to them and they made it happen. Like, I think if the car had been important to them, they would have made it happen, and it would not have been unreasonable to make a computer car that was not made of magic, but that was actually realistic, and then iterate from there. But for whatever reason, in the mid-2010s, they listened to the people who said, let's put all our chips down on full autonomy, and it's not a thing that they could do.
Yeah, something you said a minute ago seemed like there's like the ideology that Apple has didn't align with reality, which is like they like to try and have their thing, right? Like, we've done, this product market exists, but we've done our thing that makes our version better. And like, realistically, a car is so big and complicated that if they were going to try and wait for their thing, which was maybe full self-driving, like that was a bad place to start, like in hindsight, where really what they should have tried to do was make the best version they could of the current thing that, as you say, like impresses on, like, it has this feature and that feature and this feature, and it's nice and it looks good and and like it has lots of little bits, rather than they're like, we've transformed how cars work, here it is. Because just getting to the point where they had a good enough version of the current thing was a big job. And one of the things that you question in your piece, which again, I think like in hindsight was probably the way to go, is why didn't they just buy a car company? Like if they would have bought a car company, they would have been able to leapfrog all the way to, we have a car, now we can put our stuff on top. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is not invented here syndrome, right? Which is just like, why would we buy a car company? We're Apple. We can just do it. Which, in hindsight, yeah, they absolutely could have done that. There weren't very many car companies like right at the start. There was really just Tesla. Apple could have bought Tesla, but
over that 10-year span.
But over that 10-year span, yes. Yeah, I think the problem was the timing, right? By the time that they're doing Rivian and Lucid and all of these other like electric car startups, some of them started up by car companies, but some of them were on the outside,
like a Kia or a like they could have bought a company of that
I don't think Apple
to.
I mean, Apple could have done a strategic investment with a traditional big car company, but I think that one of the electric car startups would have been the thing to do. But at that point, not only did they have the not invented here syndrome, but they were deep in the they were very high on their own supply of magical self-driving car. And I think that's look, I'll just come out and say it. I especially since Trip Mickle, my favorite author, co-bylined the story about this in the New York Times. And Trip, if you don't remember, wrote that book that Mike liked and that I didn't like, that he had lots of designer sources. And it was like Apple lost the soul of its company when it stopped listening to its designers. And I would argue that not only were according to reports, the designers behind the ridiculous argument to not ship the Vision Pro and instead just wait for the future when Magic AR glasses would happen, I think that the way that I read the reports about this story is that it was that same group of people led by Johnny Ive who said, no, let's not make a regular car. Let's make an impossible car that will only work with perfect technology because we have faith that the perfect technology will come along, and they destroyed the project. At that point, I think that the project was never going to work. And I guess the answer is, well, yeah, but what if there was a breakthrough? And I would say it's irresponsible to design a product for a breakthrough that hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
You can't. It's science fiction. You're making sketches for a movie. You're designing props at that point. You have to build a real product. This is a fundamental, dare I say it, Steve Jobs kind of thing of product. You got to build a real product. What can we build today? Not if we invent a thing that's never been invented before, what product would we make? And I think that attitude, whoever it came from, but like I said, my strong sense, at least from some of the reports, is that it was a lot of people in the design group, especially, who wanted to design a magic car, and it destroyed the product because that's not how you make that product. So I think by the time they could have said, why don't we just buy Lucid, or we'll buy Rivian in the early days of that company, I think they were too far down the road of like, well, yeah, but we hired all our own people and we're working on this project and we're over here doing that. But yeah, in hindsight, they would have been much better off doing something like that. As it is, I think it's okay. I think that the moment has passed. I think that I honestly don't think Apple has much to contribute to the car industry now.
No.
Maybe that new CarPlay, again, it would be nice to see more uptake because that would be a nicer thing.
That is Apple's genuine contribution. Is that Apple does not need to make an actual car.
Right.
They should try the best they can to make operating systems for cars. Like, that is their best contribution to people driving in their automobiles. Like, I think that is the best thing. Kind of wrapping this back around to the start again a little bit, because I kind of threw us off track with the buying part. Me personally, I'm actually like, I'm hearing a lot of people saying like they were stupid to ever try this. They spent all this money. They spent all this time. From my perspective, it's just like, I mean, they have all the money in the world, right? Like, I'm happy that they took the time, because I agree that it was a good thing for them to start looking at, right? At the time that they started looking at it, this is an interesting thought. Let's look at this, right? And they started looking at it. The fact that they spent 10 years and billions of dollars, like, for me, I can kind of like, for them, so what, right? Like, they have the money to spend on something like this. They should investigate everything they possibly can. This, unfortunately, was inherently just an expensive one of these things to try and look at.
Yeah.
But then they made the decision that didn't matter, that they were happy to just cut their losses. Yeah. And I think that is a positive.
I agree. It should have happened a long time ago, but I do appreciate the discipline that finally was applied. And it sounds like the way it worked is that somebody like Tim Cook said, I need a go or no go on the car. Mm-hmm. And that's when they refactored it as, well, what could we ship instead of what do we dream about shipping? And then they looked at it and I think made the right decision, which is we don't have anything to offer here, which is a huge thing from a corporate ego perspective to say it's not worth it for us to go down this route. But I think that is where they ended up. So I think they should have killed it sooner. I think that they should not have listened to the people who said, let's design something for technology that doesn't exist. I think that was an enormous mistake early on. I wanted to mention, because you and I talked about this in the early days, especially of Upgrade a lot, which is, this is the period, so Steve Jobs has died. Tim Cook is new to the job. The perception is, oh no, he's not Steve Jobs, which he's absolutely not. This is an era where, because Steve is gone and Tim is new and Johnny Ive is still there, and Johnny Ive is not he's burning out, or if not burned out, he's bored. He they're keeping him around. I remember saying this back in the time, like, this is the deal, is Johnny will pay you anything and you can do whatever you want to stay, because Wall Street is really nervous about a huge brain drain at Apple and that there's nobody who's designing these products. And so they kept Johnny around, I think, way longer than he was necessary and way longer than he was contributing for necessary from a product design perspective. He was necessary for an optics perspective, but I think it was a sham. Anyway, so this product really, even at the time, didn't we hear like Johnny really is interested in cars? And so when he was told he could kind of like design a future car, he perked up. Like, it feels a little bit like that too. That part of the original sin here,
some of the watch stuff, right? Just like,
right,
you like watches,
right.
we'll let you make
he
a
like
gold
watches,
one.
he likes cars. He's a rich Englishman. Let's give him things that he can appreciate. So I think that was probably part of it too, in terms of internal politics. I don't know, but that's just my guess based on the reports, is that was some of it.
From what you were saying a minute ago as well, like, Tim was new, and it was pressure on him. And so I expect he was just much more like, well, I've got to do something. So like, I'll greenlight this and this and this and this, and we'll see what works. And I think what we've ended up with,
let Johnny do what he wants,
is a watch and a VR headset. Right? Like, these are the projects that probably these three were all started not within too different a time period to each other.
Yeah.
Probably within a few years.
I think that's true. And I mean, to be clear, I think we can't afford to lose this person, so let's pay them a lot of money and let them do whatever they want. While not great for your organization as a whole, I totally understand why that decision might make sense in the moment.
Time,
exactly.
It made sense.
Exactly. And then you have to unwind it, and then it does have the danger of something like that, is that it distorts things where your organization makes decisions it would not normally have made because you're trying to appease the person who you're keeping around for other reasons. And I will say the salon car and the solid gold Apple Watch are examples, I think, of distortion happening because Johnny Ive was unkillable, and they just literally had to keep him around.
But the solid gold Apple Watch was part of the Apple Watch, which has been a big success. Like, it took time.
Oh yeah. But that always felt like a little like, why did they do that? And it was like, well, I think Johnny wanted to work with those materials, and like, again, I don't think it was a complete wasteland, but I think that the reason that a project like this exists in part is probably to make somebody like Johnny Ive excited about something when you're trying to keep him. And then it builds up a momentum, and you've hired all these people, and you think it's always just fundamentally, I keep coming back to the fact, if as the report suggests, they designed this without a steering wheel, they are counting on technology to be invented that hasn't been invented yet. And that is super dangerous, which doesn't mean you don't do it for a while, but I would argue that the right way, the Apple-y way to do it, would be to build, okay, we're going to do cars and we want to get to full self-driving. Well, where do we start? Well, let's ship a car. And how do we do that? And then you ship a car. And instead, at some point, they're like, no, we're going to just design it so that we have to wait for that feature to come available. And that just seems like a mistake. Work on that feature, put a lot of R&D into that feature, but start shipping products, because I feel very strongly, like with the Vision Pro, once it's out there, you learn and you grow, and you can still be hanging your hopes on full self-driving, but you gotta ship a product and learn and iterate, and they didn't seem to want to do that. I've heard a lot of people talk about spin-off tech. Like, it'll never be worth the money they put in. Whatever spin-off tech they come out of this will never be worth the money they put into it. But there will be spin-off.
AI, and that
there's
great,
vision.
but...
Yeah, computer vision that has value, right? There's a lot of things where you're taking input from cameras and then trying to process it. A lot of that is using machine learning stuff. Like, they will pick over the body for parts, right? But they're not going to be able to use all the parts of the buffalo. There's going to be a bunch of stuff left behind that's just like not right. It's never, you're just making you're making what you can out of the issue. And there may be some great breakthrough in there.
A car chassis to have someone come up with better LiDAR technology. Right? Like, that was not needed.
Exactly. And it's not worth $10 billion.
Yeah, it's what you did. And as well, like, there obviously are good kind of parallels to the Vision Pro in all of this. Like, part of it is that they didn't abandon the Vision Pro. So like I think that it says something about their commitment. These are products that maybe were going on at the same time, took a lot of money, took a lot of effort. But then also going back to what you're saying, right? Like we all know what the Vision Pro is. It is the first step towards Apple glasses. And they think maybe they can only get to glasses by having this. But it requires starting somewhere, and they've started somewhere with the Vision Pro in public, right? Like, what can we actually make and ship? And they've made that, and they're moving forward with that, and it could maybe one day lead us to something else.
Yeah, at some point, and I'm not advocating for shipping a product that's not viable, but at some point you do need to, I think it clarifies the mind to work on a product that's shippable. And I come back to, again, the moment of saying, we're going to invest a lot of money creating something that requires a breakthrough that we haven't broken through on. I think it was a bad idea. And that's why I was so offended when I read that Mark Gurman report fairly late in the game, 2019, something like that, saying they were still designing a car without a steering wheel. And it was like, what are you doing? Like, how? Because if Elon Musk had said that, Tesla would have just gone out of business, right? Like, because, and this is a guy who was convinced, or at least said, I don't know if he was actually convinced, but keeps saying full self-driving is right around the corner. And like, but he shipped cars with steering wheels, sometimes bad steering wheels, but steering wheels, because he also wanted to sell cars and make money, no matter whatever his confidence was on the full self-driving software. So I don't know. It was. I don't think that it was a mistake from the beginning. I think it got completely off track. I think they should have killed it way sooner. Given that, I'm glad that they killed it now, because. And I'm glad that they apparently went through the process of looking at everything that they'd done and saying, can we ship something? No, then let's kill it. I think that was the right thing to do. I just think that they should have done it a lot sooner.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. With Squarespace, you can stand out from the crowd with a beautiful website, engage directly with your audience, and sell anything. Products, services, even the content that you create. Squarespace has everything you need all in one place. It's so simple to get started. Squarespace has designs, like website template designs, for every single category of website, every use case. And they're so easy to customize, update the content, update the look, and the features that you need to fit the unique needs of the website you want to make. You can make any Squarespace template do whatever you want, so your idea, brand, or business will stand out on every device. This is all thanks to Fluid Engine, Squarespace's drag-and-drop technology for customizing every design detail of your website. Works with both desktop or mobile. You can stretch your imagination online with Fluid Engine. It's built in and ready to go on any new Squarespace site. And talking about the functionality to fit your needs, if you want to sell your goods, whether it's physical or digital, they have all of the tools that you need. It's very easy to just add online store functionality to your Squarespace website, and you can keep track of everything with Squarespace's built-in analytics. You can learn where your site visitors are coming from, where your sales are coming from, and analyze which channels are most effective for you. You can use this to improve your website and to maybe build a marketing plan of your own. Whenever I want to put something online, I just want to go straight to having the website, and Squarespace is the easiest way to do this. I've been using Squarespace for various projects for like 15 years now, and this is the reason why I find it so simple to use. They have all of the features that I want, and they're always making updates and improvements to the platform that I get to take advantage of, and I don't need to do any of the work for. Go and check it out today for yourself by going to squarespace.com/upgrade. You can sign up for a free trial, try everything out, build your entire website. You only need to sign up when you are ready to launch it to the world. And when you do, if you go to squarespace.com/upgrade and use the code upgrade at checkout, you'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That is squarespace.com/upgrade and the code upgrade when you decide to sign up to get 10% off your first purchase and show your support for the show. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. It is time for Ask Upgrade Questions to finish out today's show. And Adam starts with, a month in, how much are you using Vision Pro on an average day?
I hate these questions. I don't have an average day.
Okay.
What's your average day like? I record part of a podcast.
Would you like me to cut this question?
I read part of an article. No, I think it's fine. I just I don't have an average day. I will give you an example of a day, which is on Friday I was trying to write a column that was my Apple Car column, and I was struggling with focus, and I drank some tea and I sat down at the computer in the back bedroom, and I just I just couldn't. I was like trying to get going, and I was doing like all the avoidance things of like, I'm just not ready to write this yet. And then I sat down on the couch with a Bluetooth keyboard and the Vision Pro and brought up Runestone and wrote the whole article. So as an example of a way that I'm using Vision Pro on a day to do a task. I also watched I ran out of time, half of Dune Part 1 in 3D on the Vision Pro because that looked awesome, and I wanted to rewatch it before I saw Dune Part 2, which I saw this weekend and is excellent. But I didn't get to watch all of Dune Part 1, but that was a beautiful thing. And Lauren was at work, and so that was a thing I could do that wasn't closing her out. So I don't have a number of like average, but I can tell you I do some writing in it. I do some sort of, as Mike said last time, noodling around of like, I'm checking on this and I'm checking on that to try and then I'm also using it for things that are not normal use, which is like trying apps that come out and seeing what they're like and seeing how they're used. So have I found like a routine? I haven't.
Maybe a better way to ask this question is like, are you finding yourself using it on a daily basis or a somewhat daily basis? And it sounds like the answer is mostly yes.
It's certainly not every day. But many days, and it again depending on what I'm trying to do and trying to find the places where it fits in my life and the places where it doesn't. And the two places now that I found it is viable are another place that's an alternate way to get my brain out of its, whatever space it's in and focus for writing. Because you can put a million windows around you, but you can also just put one window and put an environment up, or even not have an environment up and just have the one window and focus on it. And I find that pretty useful. What about you?
Yeah, I would say like I keep my Vision Pro at the studio, so I only use it on days when I'm here, so just on work days. And I find time to use it every day as part of my work day. And it's very easy for me to do that because of the idea of it's noodling around time. And like it's the computer that at the moment I am enjoying the most of like
for the noodling.
Because I have a list of things that I want to use, like that's like, like, oh, there's this new app. Like, so that's part of noodling. But also is just the kind of like, I don't have a fixed piece of work that I'm going to do right now, so I'm just going to be bouncing around from thing to thing for a little bit, and that's great. But also it is just like, I want to just hang out for a bit. It's perfect for that, and it's like comfortable to use. So at the moment, I am very easily finding time to use it every day. I don't feel like I'm forcing myself to use it in that way. I will give some real-time follow-up from Zach Hall at 9to5Mac, who has confirmed by talking to Apple that Apple will indeed be adding the second external monitor with lid closed feature to the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M3 in a future software update.
So it is a software/firmware issue, not a like this is the way we made the hardware for the MacBook Air different. Good.
It feels more like it is that they can update the firmware with software, right? Like I feel like it's probably what's happening. As you say, it wasn't like this has a second display controller and the system on a chip or whatever. So.
I would have asked Apple, but I was doing a podcast.
Indeed.
Instead, but yeah.
Indeed.
Yep.
Chris asks, when the time comes for Apple to update their Mac accessories, do you think they keep the Magic Mouse around?
Yes.
Yeah, you think so?
I think so. I think people use mice. I don't, but people do, and I think Apple is committed. I mean, I'm sure they see the numbers, but like, I'm sure people buy an iMac and they get it with a mouse, right? I have a hard time envisioning them not offering a mouse. I really do. I get the argument is lots of people make mice, and that's true, but like, I don't know. I think Apple will keep making one because some people want it.
I could see a world in which they're like, you can use a mouse, we just don't make one. Like, I can see that world. And the reason is like, some of the decisions they've made recently, like a Vision Pro, you can't use a mouse. You have to use a trackpad. Like, mice just don't work. Stuff like that is like, they're very trackpad focused.
Didn't I see that in the new beta, the developer beta, you can use a mouse?
Oh,
on the
really?
Vision Pro?
They've added that? I don't know. I don't use the developer beta. I know you. So you can use mice now?
I don't. I thought I saw something about that, but
Okay.
but I don't know. I just. Either way, I think they could drop the mouse. I just don't think they will because people use mice, so they'll offer it. I doubt it will ever be innovated severely. They might change where you plug it in, but I don't think that that's what they're going for. But I do think that they'll keep it around. I can see the scenario, but I just don't think it'll happen.
Right. Well, we'll see. What else have we got? And
can that be a new segment? Can that replace Upshift with like
just mouse
talk?
Mouse talk. The mouse is in the house or something like that.
Mouse click. It's the mouse time. No, Nathan asks, at CES, Belkin announced Qi 2 magnetic battery packs. I've also seen these from Anker too. Do you think Apple's going to rejoin the club with their own USB-C MagSafe battery pack or leave it to third-party accessory makers? I have no opinion about this. I've never used one of these products. I don't particularly get them. I'd say that since Apple... Okay, here's my answer. Since Apple's done it in the past, when I thought, why would they do that? Then probably in the future, they'll also make them.
I mean, it goes back to... You just said that they make mice because people use mice, so they'll make mice.
Yeah.
I mean, people use the battery packs and have used Apple's cheap battery pack they had before that they stopped making. Will they make another one?
It's not quite the same because, if you buy an iMac, you do need a pointing device to use it. So they have to offer something to you. Where a battery pack is optional. But yeah, I feel like if they find that it's... they did. I don't know. I would say, sure, why not? Because they can make money at it. But it does seem... I've always thought that was kind of strange. How about the Upgrade Mouse Club? Or Mike's Mouse Club?
We need another M, though. Like Mike's Mouse... something.
No, because it's like the Mickey Mouse Club. It's Mike's Mouse Club.
Oh, Mikey's Mouse Club.
Mikey's Mouse Club.
We're legally distinct.
I love it.
Mikey's Mouse Club.
All right.
And finally, David asks, and he's asking to me here, if I recall, Mike, you are wearing the latest Apple Watch Ultra 2 with the tap feature, so like the double tap. When wearing the Vision Pro, do you have any input clashes as they're using the same pinch gesture for input? So, a couple of things here. One, the scenario in which that would have to happen would be rare, right? Of pinching twice, because typically something has to be going on as well on the
and
Apple
pretty
Watch.
Forceful.
Yeah,
and forceful is not a thing on because force is doing it in the watch. But
they are nowhere near
pictures.
the same gestures.
It's literally a camera that's looking to see where your fingers are. So they're very different gestures.
But I also do. I wear my watch on my left wrist, and I operate Vision Pro mostly with my right hand. I don't know why. It's just the one that I've chosen, probably because it's what I typically will use my mouse with. It's like my mouse or trackpad. In Mikey's Mouse Corner, I use my mouse. My mouse corner is on the right-hand side. So I have never had this happen. However, Apple, in their wisdom, have added a feature that is going to be in 17.4 to allow you to turn off double tap when using the Vision Pro. So that that your watch will know when you're wearing the Vision Pro and turn off the you can choose to turn off the double tap feature when you're using it if it was something that you were getting into trouble with. But I would find it for me very difficult to find a way in which that happens, because it is, while it is still the same finger and thumb, it is a much different amount of force, the way that you do it. It is very, very different. But maybe you're just furiously clicking around when you're noodling on the Vision Pro, and you set things off left, right, and center. If you would like to send us a question for us to answer on a future episode, please go to upgradefeedback.com. It's where you can send in your Ask Upgrade questions, your Snell Talk questions, or any follow-up or feedback you may have about the show. If you want to check out Jason's work, go to sixcolors.com. I'm sure Jason will have some stuff to say about these new Macs. As soon as he's able to try them, you'll be able to read them there at sixcolors.com. And you can hear his podcast here on Relay FM and at theincomparable.com, where you'll also hear me too. I'm on many shows here at Relay FM. You can check out my product work over at cortexbrand.com. You can find us on Mastodon. Jason is at jsnell on zeppelin.flights. I am at imyke, IMYKE, on mike.social. You can find video clips of the show on our, we're on Mastodon as upgrade at relayfm.social. Also on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, we are at Upgrade Relay. You can also find, we've put on the YouTube channel now a couple of segments of the show instead. If you want to watch a segment of the show that maybe you enjoyed, wanted to see what our faces looked like during that segment rather than watching the full episode.
Maybe.
Our continued experiments. We're both on Threads as well. I'm Mike. Jason is JSNL. Thank you to our members who support us with Upgrade Plus, where you can get longer ad-free versions of the show each and every week at getupgradeplus.com. Thank you to our sponsors, Squarespace, ExpressVPN, and Fitbod, for helping make this episode happen. But most of all, thank you for listening. Until next time, say goodbye, Jason.
Bye, everybody.